Hello and welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show. Today we're chatting all things Bradford Park Avenue and we're asking if the Abbey are in crisis or just in a period of transition. They were relegated last season and despite the win last weekend, they do find themselves in 18th place in the Northern Premier League. Joining us to discuss this and more, it's our resident Bradford Park Avenue and non-league correspondent Lewis Sale. And we've also got our non-league presenter on, Chris Bell, as well. And we're hoping to be joined a little bit later on by Bradford Park Avenue director Paul Armitage as well. So good evening, gentlemen. If you're watching along as well, please do like the video, get your comments in, get your questions in. We're here to discuss everything Bradford Park Avenue and get through everything that's been going on with the club. Lewis, I'd like to go to you first. We'll have a lot of Park Avenue fans watching, but can you just kind of set the scene as to what it's been like supporting the club over the last couple of seasons and the current state that the club finds itself in?
It's been tough. It's been a real tough watch. You go through thick and thin, as a football fan, through your highs and your lows, but I think especially for the past 5 years, it's been difficult. I think there's been a bit of grace in terms of hoping things will get better, especially when the pinnacle was that 5-1 victory over at Guys on Boxing Day. That was everybody's thinking, we can do something here. We could almost go up because Guys were a good team, and no disrespect to Guys, we were a better team. And then all of a sudden, things changed. Players started to leave. I remember going to Brackley and we lost Stephen Drench, Ben McKenna, Nicky Rowe. Quite a decent spine of your team. And from there, it's not got any better on the pitch. There's changes being made, kind of off the field as well to try and improve the infrastructure of a club. But I think for the past 5 years, as an Avenue supporter going to watch the first team, the men's first team, it's been a decline. From being one game away from being in the final, a few minutes after the defeat against Brackley in the semi-final, where your final opponents are going to be Harrogate. You look at where Harrogate have gone and you look at where Avenue are at the moment. It's day and night. There's just no comparison between the two teams. And, there's only years ago when we used to play each other in the West Round and County Cup, you'd go along and there might be 100 people there. Those were the days that, arguably Avenue were a better team at sometimes than Harrogate. And you see the difference between the both now. And you look at the current day where we are, we're just hovering above the relegation zone in the MPL. When people were hoping to be pushing up towards the right end of the table. Listen, it's early in the season, it still might happen, but early indicators at the moment suggest that we are in for another battle. Some people, including myself, were desperate for some experience, some leadership. We've seen that league, we've been in those leagues before, and seen divisions below where, sometimes it's the tough man who can really, get through games, can pull some of the young kids around, and we just haven't got that experience. And big players have gone at crucial times in the season. And we know that we're not a big club, we're a very small club in quite a large pond in the region. There's no disputing that. But what's really, I think, frustrated a lot of people, especially recently, is there's little hope and ambition from where we can see on the pitch, and from where we're going, because there's been a lot of things being said and hope that we would get to in the past 5 years, 10 years. But at the moment, I think we've gone backwards, which is frustrating, and people voting with their feet as well.
Absolutely. Well, I'm delighted to say joining us now, we've got Paul Armitage on the show, the Bradford Park Avenue director. Good evening, Paul. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, and hello to all the fans too.
Yeah, really appreciate you coming on. I'm sure you've heard a little bit of what Lewis has had to say there, but just from your viewpoint, where do you think things lay for Bradford Park Avenue at the moment?
Well, as Lewis was saying, it's been a tough few years in National League North. I think you've got to give a lot of credit to Mark and Danny for doing so well in National League North when you look at how other clubs have coped. We were doing it on the lowest budget in National League North, as everybody knows. So credit to Mark and Danny. And if you look at other clubs in National League North, either the ones that have been promoted, like Kidderminster, who did really well against us last season, they're struggling at the foot of the National League. I talked to the owner of Kings Lynn, first match of last season, when they, I think, quite luckily beat us 1-0. He was saying that if we don't go up last season, were in trouble. And there you see Kings Lynn down at the bottom of National League, or in the bottom four of National League North. So these are not easy leagues to win unless you've got loads of money. We don't have loads of money, and that's been partly the reason why things have not gone as well as they might. But I think in the management team we've got and the way they have confidence in themselves and in the team, we've done really well. And we're very lucky to have the managers we've got. I noticed in social media recently, somebody was suggesting that maybe they would be doing their reputation more good if they left rather than stayed. Well, Mark and Danny have had offers over the last couple of months from at least two bigger clubs that I know of. And they've decided they'd much rather stay with us because they have confidence in the squad, confidence in the club, and confidence in the way it's run. Now, it's not showing yet in results on the field. Fully accept that. But when you look at football matches as a fan, you see what you think you understand, you share your views. And with Mark and Danny, you get to share your views directly with them in the bar after a match. You couldn't have more communication than that. You've got Luca as well, who's always there talking to fans. We do our best. We look around. Those guys have good contacts in West Yorkshire. And in fact, I can announce that we're about to sign a lad who was originally comes from Halifax. He's a number 10. He's a midfielder. He's currently at Spennymoor, and his name is Connor Shanks. Now, he's a young lad. He's coming on loan, but we've had good reports. We've done lots of due diligence. We're going to have a look at him and see if he's as good as everybody says. He came through the Huddersfield Academy. We've got good contacts there. We've had good players from there. And we've obviously got good contacts with Spennymoor. We've had two players go up there recently. So we know a bit about the lad. And Mark is very confident that he's going to make a difference. He's just one player. We're looking at others. So, the team is constantly looking to improve. And I know, I can't disagree that the results haven't been as good as we thought. But at the beginning of the season, when we had the list of players who were going to play for us, I think there was a lot of confidence that they had some experience. There was a blend of experience and youth. And we thought we were going to get off to a better start. I still feel as confident as Mark and Danny do that it will come good. And that will come because of the experience in the team already, the youth in the team, and the fact that we're still looking for players to come in and help and improve. So it's not been easy, but we're very confident that it'll get better. And I think, from someone who remembers the dark days before we went out of existence, and thinking of all those spectators who are still, supporters who are still coming, who remember going through 4 years of bad results, there's an understanding that football can knee you in the groin every now and again, and following football teams can be tough. I mean, look at Burnley. They were beating everybody last year, and they're struggling this year. There are other teams, like look at Huddersfield at the moment. They're not doing as well as they have done. And football's like that. And you've just got to be patient and believe that the people you've got in key positions are going to make a difference. Now, I was listening, I don't know if you listened a week last Monday to Gary O'Neill on Sky, analysing a football match. He and pro footballers who've been through the mill have played at professional level, have got their qualifications and have got experience of management. they see football games in different ways to fans and supporters. And you've got to have some confidence that the people with the experience are going to come good and select the right players, get the right formation, and bring it together. I've got that confidence. And I know it's not easy when the results go against you, but, we've put a lot of money into the club. We've got a very good structure in terms of creating over the last few years. We've created through Tom McStravick a group of juniors, a group of academy players, and a pathway that takes players right the way through to the first team. It comes with a lot of hard work, and Tom is always available to sit and explain things to people. If you go to one of his presentations to parents, you'll learn an awful lot about how he goes about his work and what he does. If you want to learn more about the commercial side of the business, go and have a chat with Callum Cullen, who, for example, took a week of holiday, renovated our club shop, and made it look like a proper shop with just himself and his helper, Tom Ogden, doing all the work themselves. There are a lot of good people doing good things down there, and it's frustrating that the results haven't come. But I can remember the dark times, just before we went out of existence. I was lucky enough to remember the good times as well, because I started supporting the team around about 1959-60 season, just before Jimmy Schooler came down from Lewis's beloved Newcastle and actually made a difference and got us promoted with the likes of Hector, Fryatt, Ham, Spratt, Buchanan, all those good names from the 60s. There are good times coming, I'm sure. But the key at the moment in football is that the football model in the UK is utterly dependent on finance and money. Absolutely no alternative to that. And we've got an owner who has, to his credit, put in money knowing that he's not going to get that back, but creating a system whereby if players come through and do well and move on and we get money for them and we get ongoing money for them if they get transferred further up the leagues, then we've got a chance of covering some of our costs. If you look down the road at Bradford City and what they must have earned, and I'm guessing here because I don't know all the details, but what they earned from Ollie McBurney's transfer, my guess is that they're getting £500,000 each year over 5 years, because I think he was over 2 million that he went for. That makes a big difference to a football club. It covers an awful lot of your costs. But of course, if you don't keep doing that, you'll find yourself in a year where that just falls off the edge of a cliff, and you're looking for more players to sell than to buy. So money is a key factor in running football clubs, and that works all the way through the system. We've been very, very lucky having Gareth plough so much money into the club. And yes, it has to go into the infrastructure of the stadium, because there are certain standards you have to meet in terms of stadium safety, in terms of floodlighting, in terms of facilities for each league that you're in. We've been very lucky in that respect to have Gareth's money coming in. And we're very lucky that there's groups of supporters who raise money for us as well. And that goes towards the playing budget. And just to explain, we've just recently sold George Sykes-Kenworthy to York. We got a decent fee for him. We got good sell-on percentages for him, not only for his next move, but for the move after that. And that's one of the keys to trying to cover your costs, having that pathway. We do that well, and we've only really done that since we've had Tom McStravick working in the academy. We keep our costs down through Callum and his commercial work, his work with the shop, and through Neil and Ben, who are volunteers, who organise the bar and the food. And if you want to know how good the food is, just ask Lewis about the chips. He waxes lyrical about them, as most people do who've tried them. There are good things done by good people at this club, and I feel very positive about it. And, you know, you probably want to ask me some more questions, but
yeah, no.
But you've got to have confidence in your club. You've got to support them through good and bad times. There were good times when we were, as Lewis says, top of the league, beat Guiseley 5-1. We weren't getting more supporters through the door then, or not many more supporters. We've obviously lost some by coming down a league, but it's not as if the crowds doubled when we were doing well. And there's a bit of a problem there, which is historic, because those years when we were out of existence, we lost a generation of supporters. And it's very hard coming back from that, very hard to build things back up. But the very few people who work there, either as paid employees or volunteers, couldn't be working harder to make what we offer good. We could always do with more volunteers. We moved, for example, we moved Trevor Halings into an ambassadorial role because he's excellent at that. But we then lost him from selling raffle tickets. We've now got the junior teams selling raffle tickets because we've incentivized them by saying that if you sell more than so many raffle tickets, we'll put money towards your trips away for footballing experiences. So we're getting a whole generation involved at the right level. But these things take time. They take time, they take effort, and they take money. And we've been very lucky getting money from Gareth. And if we could get more time served and commitment, a bit like the guys who turn up and do the turnstiles, for example, Mad Pete and Tesco Ian, they come and give us time and commitment, and their only benefit is they get to watch the football match without having to pay. There's an awful lot of good things going on down at Avenue. I'm very proud of what we do. And I know it's tough at the moment because the results haven't gone our way. Look at Guiseley last season, who got relegated and then ended up halfway up the league. It's not easy. And, you know, Guiseley are there or thereabouts this year. I don't know if you feel they've improved or not, but the change is difficult. We do look around locally for local players. We've approached a few of them. We've got good contacts around the local football teams. Lewis will know that Danny's brother Nicky is at Campion. So we have good information about Campion. We've got Albion Sports playing on our own ground. So we've got good information about them. We've even in the past made offers to players who we think might want to jump up a league. And frustratingly, they prefer to, one or two of them prefer to stay in the league they're in because they're doing well in that league and they're not quite sure they can jump up a league. You'll find that with players, National League North to National League clearly isn't easy. Look at Kidderminster, even Fylde are struggling and they throw loads of money at their players. The jump up in a league is never that easy. You're very lucky if you find someone who's good enough to do that. You've sometimes got to go to the academies to try and test people out. We've got Heath Richardson being tested out at the moment in goal. He will obviously have seen what happened to George Sykes-Kenworthy, and hopefully that will inspire him. We've got this lad Connor Shanks coming in, who's going to be in the same position, wanting to impress us, and we want him to impress us. We're trying to strengthen that spine of the team. We'd like to, at the moment, we're suffering with injury. We're trying to find solutions there because we're determined to spend the money that we've got from George's transfer to strengthen the team. All the things you would expect us to be doing as a good football club. So I hope that helps give a bit of perspective as to how we view things. But I'm fully aware that if you're not winning matches, everybody gets a bit down. I mean, look at Manchester United last night. It's another reason why Lewis is probably going to smile as well. It was his second team who absolutely stuffed them. Sometimes you go through bad times. Sometimes the results don't go with you. I mean, if you think about Newcastle, was it 1955 when they last won a trophy? That's a long time to wait for success, but it's come now. It's come because of the money they've got and the money they're spending. They're spending it wisely, but they've got the money. And that is the key. If you have the money, it makes it a whole lot easier. Did you see, for example, Fylde's accounts last year? £800,000 put in by the owner in 1 year. And that's why they got promoted. Because every team it seemed to me that every team they played, if they saw a good player, they signed him. They picked up Will Hatfield and then moved him on. But that was because he played well against them. So some teams have a load of money and spend it. We don't have a load of money, but we're doing our best to spend what we do have when we do have it. And we've looked long term and said that the way to cover your costs is to develop players from junior to academy to first team. Over to you, because I'm talking too much. You may be getting fed up. I hope our fans aren't, but you might be. It's your programme. What can I do
numbers are
to
going
help?
up. It's fine. I was just going to say thanks for that, Paul. It's signing in the door as well. Connor Shanks, great stuff. Lewis, hearing what Paul's had to say there, what is your reaction to that?
I'm not hearing you.
Understand where he's coming from there?
I don't think
I don't
people
seem to have any feedback volume.
Oh, I don't really know what to suggest.
I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can hear us, Paul. I don't know if you can hear us. For me, kind of following on from what Paul said, I don't think people are arguing the point that Gareth's put the money in. I don't think that there's been that kind of argument. At the end of the day, and I've seen quotes from directors and other clubs and stuff where the owners are supposed to be the custodians, and I've said that before. I think probably stewards is probably a better way of describing it. Really, don't get me wrong. I think sometimes fans may feel they may have a bit of entitlement, rightly or wrongly. But at the end of the day, fans pay the money, buy the season tickets, buy the merch. So there is an element of supposed entitlement to hopefully get something back in return. I think for me, the most frustrating part of it is, and I think where we're in this moment now is that some of us have seen this possibly happening, and I think we're in that very moment where we are struggling massively on the pitch. Some of us have, said this, we've predicted it happen, and I think, we might have contacts around locally, but I don't really see us signing those kind of players. We've heard previously about, using a data-led scouting system. That doesn't really exist in our levels at the moment. It can be subjective, and players might not always fit certain teams and stuff. And I know it's hard when supporters do have, rose-tinted glasses on like myself sometimes, where it is your club. But at the end of the day, I'd be hoping that we could try and convince some of these players through our own internal processes to make sure we'd come. How are we inducting those players? Are we showcasing what we're all about? I've got a presentation. You've seen, using Newcastle example, how they've completely revolutionised the way that they're introducing new players and how they're adapting to these times to kind of show off to these prospective targets what we're all about. For me, what really is irking myself, being honest, and a lot of fans, is I can't see where the hope and ambition is. How long's a piece of string? I know that we were talking about long term, but we've had 5 years of decline on the pitch. We got saved by the season being null and void by COVID. I understand the budget, but I also sometimes don't think we're getting best for our buck. I really don't. I could be wrong. I don't know the figures, but I'll be surprised if we're the lowest budget in this league. And at the moment, we're against some teams, not every team, where we're not matching them, which is, I think, frustrating, especially when you're being relegated. And I think what really hurts is, and I've mentioned this before on social media, we've got hardcore supporters voting with their feet. They're literally not coming. I'll be honest, I hold my hand up. I didn't come for one game because something needs to happen. I'm not saying, not throwing personal insults, but something needs to change to get the club on a incline again, because it's been declining for far too long. People voting with their feet. New families we know have come, 4 or 5 families. People with in their family have come and are not coming to come again. And we're supposed to be about the community and helping local people out and helping the kids out. What we're doing to entice those people back. And I know for a fact there's 2 people who've messaged saying they've come and are not coming again. And I didn't see any representative from the club to speak to them privately, to drop them a message, to say I'm really sorry to hear about that. Can we have a chat? I think it's poor. I think the club should be doing everything they possibly can when we're in this moment to try and just do what we can. And, we've seen a lot of people coming in with, I know we'll go through it with questions and comments for Paul, because there's a lot of people who were not happy. And I don't think it's a minority. I think in the previous, it was a minority. I think they were graced before. I don't know, Paul mentioned about seeing social media about managers potentially going on for better things. That was me. I'll openly admit it. That was me who said that. And the reason is because I think Bauer and Bosch are a far better set of managers than probably where they should be at the moment in time. And I think they deserve the opportunity to manage higher up the leagues. Do I think we've made mistakes in the past year and a half? Yeah, absolutely. Told them to the face. And we have a grown-up conversation in the bar. Like Paul says, you can chat to him. We don't always have to agree, but it's a civilised conversation. I think recruitment has been poor, quite poor, if I'm being honest, over the past 2-3 years to do something competitive. If his teams last year in the Conference North, you can almost take the budget a little bit out in context, but we weren't competitive against some teams. We were getting turned over, and fans, including myself, were going expecting to lose. That's not what a football supporter should be about. And there's some, the stories that we see on the social media, whether it's true or not. I know from one family last year, juniors, we're all about juniors. Some juniors didn't get a junior didn't get his playing kit until Christmas in the season. Why? It's this kind of thing where it isn't just a men's football team. We're talking about juniors. We're talking about everything that encompasses it. Seeing today, Paul, I'll throw it out, seeing something on the website in public domain. Apparently, on the 3G pitch register for Football Foundation, apparently that's expired. So apparently we shouldn't be playing FA affiliated football on there. Again, there's a lot of questions to be asked, and I know a lot of people will come out at the moment, and we'll probably go through this where we acknowledge the work that's been done, but the supporters are not responsible for this, and at the moment they're really hurting. And I think we just need a bit of reassurance, a bit of hope and ambition to see what is the next 5-10 years all about. Because if it's the previous 5 years, the crowds will go down even further.
Well, I think you've got to give credit to Mark and Danny for staying in National League North with the lowest budget for 5 years. I know it hasn't been beautiful football all the time, but we did get a couple of playoffs in, and that's all down to Mark and Danny. So it's what they do.
Oh, sorry, we just lost you
there.
Sorry,
you keep coming and going. I'm hoping that you're hearing me.
Yeah, we can hear you now, yeah.
I'm not quite sure what you expect the changes to be, because the investment, for example, what investment we've got out of George's money is going straight into the first team. It's extra money that we weren't expecting, although, to be fair, other clubs were looking at George right at the beginning of the season. But all that money is going back into the first team. We started today with Connor Shanks. We'll carry on looking. Mark is the arbiter of who he wants and who he doesn't want, and he will continue to make those decisions. It is not easy when you're not winning games. all we can do is try and improve that situation. But if you're going to survive in football, you've got to have a strategic plan, which has been the introduction of juniors and academy as a system, as a way forward, because you can't just expect an owner to keep burning money in a money pit with no obvious sign of a future. It's not a very sensible business model. You've got to try and fix that model by creating and developing your own players. It worked very well for Manchester United in 1992, and it probably worked better for them now if they were focused on it. But it's a way forward, and whilst it's long term, it is our best hope. And
So
in the meantime,
Paul, then,
I think we've got to trust the professionals to select the right players and the players to do well. And if they're not doing well, I'm absolutely convinced that Mark and Danny will move them on and find better players.
So short term, and we're talking long term. I don't know what years.
Are there any other questions coming through then?
Well, for me, short term, what's the solution to fix where we are at the moment?
I've lost you again.
Any good? Can you hear us now, Paul? Oh, you might have to keep coming in and out, I think, to be able to. His mic goes off. Our mics go off on his end there.
I know there's a lot of questions coming in the guys, so I think it's best to ask them. I think for me, I kind of get the notion of it. For me, I'm still struggling to see where the short term and medium term feelings are and the ambition and the hope. I think that's what's really annoying people. But let's throw some questions out to Paul, because I think there's some really good questions coming in. Because there are a lot that I would probably ask as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got a lot of questions coming in. Please keep those coming up, and also do pop a like on the video as well. I just want to go back to one that David Horsfield threw out. He said Martin Knight thought we would have a competitive budget. In fact, he was on this show, I think, saying the exact same thing a few months ago. But obviously, we can all agree that wasn't correct. So where does Mr. Armitage think we will finish this season?
I think it is a competitive budget in this league. It's certainly not the sort of budget you need if you're going to survive in the league above, because that clearly is a tougher and more expensive league, and the players are earning 3 or 4 times as much as we're able to pay in the league above. Where do I think we'll finish? I suspect we'll end up replicating Geisley's impact in their first season when they dropped down, somewhere around about halfway. But it's not, apart from Ratcliffe, it's not a league where others are running away with it. So I would imagine they'll win the league, I'm guessing, but that's what I think most people would say with the money they've thrown at their team. There's an outside chance of playoffs, but I think anything above halfway will be okay. But the long-term aim and the medium-term aim is to carry on pushing upwards. There's an ambition to get back to the National League North, but there's certainly a great concern that we need to create more income in order to survive at that level. It's about money.
Oh, sorry, Paul. I don't know if you just cut out there. For me, I'll challenge that back. Is we know we haven't got the biggest budget. There's been no dispute about that. But are we getting the best for our buck with this?
You'd have to ask Mark and Danny about that, because they're the ones who choose the players. They're the ones who are confident that this squad can do it. And if you want to change a player, if you think there's a player who shouldn't be there, have a chat with Mark and Danny, because my guess is that they will have those views as well, and they will be looking all the time at whether they've got the right players in, whether they can move people out or move people in. It is down to the players to show their best side. And I am absolutely confident that if Mark and Danny think they've got to move somebody on, they will do. And if they've got people they think they can bring in who will be better, they will do that too. They have some flexibility now that we've got some money in, to actually do that. And, you know, how confident are you in them? Other clubs are confident in them because they've tried to take them. But they want to stay because they're confident with this squad. They're confident they can improve this squad as well.
And I think, okay, I get that. For me, I mean, you know what I think about Bosch, and some people don't always agree. You know, I think we've created some memories for fans and supporters. I don't think there's any disputing that. Chris will know from a guy's perspective, they've done it there. You don't turn bad managers overnight. I'm not disputing that. My concern is we've been on the slide for 5 years.
Well, we've been.
Paul, just let me finish. And then what I'm saying is we've been on the slide for 5 years. People are now wanting some short-term resolutions. We understand the long-term, infrastructure and what that plan might look like. Whether people agree with it or not, that's where the club set it, and the decision makers are fine. And you know what? That's people put themselves on a pedestal to do that. For me, I'm struggling to see where the short-term gain is for us at the moment, both majority on the pitch. And like I say, I think, and that's hard when you've got a squad which is limited in terms of numbers and depth. We've called this out at the beginning of the season. Some of us called it out a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I get budget's got an extent to it, but, people are now wanting something tangible to hold on. People not coming because they're frustrated, they're annoyed. Some of them have come back at Mark and Danny and criticised the style of football that sometimes they play. They want a bit of excitement. They need to feel entertained. People come to a game at the moment and it's very, very flat. There's very little atmosphere apart from, to the credit, some young lads who've started to come, but how long they'll last when a team's, on the slide is another thing. People just want to see some entertainment and get the money's worth. And I think over the past 5 years on the pitch, I'm struggling to see that myself at the moment.
We had players. We were in play. That was exciting. I remember Boise scoring at Kidderminster. That was exciting.
It was, but we're talking quite a while ago. This isn't last season, 2 years ago. This has been since those days, which I know it's in relatively football terms, it might not seem a lot, but for supporters who are paying the money week in, week out, that feels a long time. And it's not as if we've been stabilising. We haven't stabilised. We've declined. That's a fact. We have gone down. We're not any better. We're worse now than what we were 5 years ago. And I think where people are getting despondent and disillusioned is that they're not seeing what they're getting. They're not getting the value from what they're paying to watch on a Saturday. And I think that's where, something needs to just be sorted. And I know that's not an easy fix, but at the moment, some of us have been proved right from what we said 2 years ago.
Oh, I think he's gone again. We've got quite a few.
I think he's had enough of me, but
well, we've got a ton of questions. I hope he does come back on because we've got loads and loads of comments coming on. There's quite a lot of stuff around the stadium, what's happening with the pitch, things of that nature. Paul's back with us. Hi, Paul. Yeah, we've got loads of questions coming in. Just a couple of other things that have been kind of bubbling in the background. Hayden brings this to our attention as well. Is it true that West Bowling have been banned from the clubhouse? We've had quite a few people kind of asking about this.
I think you'll find in the next couple of days more information about that. But we've had some serious behavioural problems with people representing West Bowling. And we've got to the position where we've suspended them having events in there because of seriously bad behaviour, law breaking, and aggressive approaches to staff and to employed staff and volunteers. So there has been an issue. We're in the process of addressing it. The first step has been to suspend them running events because the behaviour has been so poor. And we will be looking very seriously in the next day or two as to what action we should be taking to solve this problem. So it's a localised problem. It's entirely behavioural from West Bowling people, and we will solve this problem.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Comment here from Jay Leeman. I'm an on and off fan of Avenue, not only going for the wins, but at the moment it's looking like back-to-back relegation. There needs to be more commercial advertising at the club. A tweet, a Facebook post doesn't reach as far as some may think. If I mention Avenue to people, they ask, who are they? They haven't any information at street level. Is that something that needs to be kind of stepped up at the club, would you say, to get the word out there?
I think most people these days are attuned to Facebook and Twitter, and I think we've got a decent page. It's informative, and it's more informative than many other clubs. Going around the town, I mean, today Callum's announced that we've got a presence in a local shop in the middle of town selling our gear. Yes, there's probably more we can do. Do we have the people who are paid to do it? No, we don't. Why not? Because we haven't got the money. Callum works way more hours than you can imagine to try and get the word around. He goes around companies getting sponsorship. He gives free match tickets away or match tickets at low prices away. There's a limit to what one person can do. If you look at a club like Darlington with hundreds, literally hundreds of supporters throwing money into the club, there's a lot more people there who are passionate about their support for the club and go around the town and make it obvious that that's what they've got, passion for the club. And I hope that we can continue to do reasonably well, but it is very hard to do that without more bodies and more money. I think Callum does a terrific job, and I think one of our problems long term has been that gap of existence between 74 and the mid 80s. And that's a hard one you can't bridge that gap easily. It's going to take time, which is why our focus is on the youngsters and getting young people and their parents involved in the club, coming to the club. And as Lewis said, there's a band of small kids who are starting to make a noise at matches. Callum's organised them, given them flags to wave, told them if they don't behave, they're going to be out. But he's encouraging them to get involved and cheer the club on. Tom, with his work with parents and kids, is having the set. These things take time, but we are doing the right things with very few people, limited money, and we're trying to get the best and do the best.
So just on that, I'll just jump in because I know Chris has got a quick question to ask. To me, there's a bit of conflict in this because I know Martin, like I said, we spoke to earlier. Listen, we might not always agree what Martin says. I don't personally always agree with him, but we have our own different opinions, which is absolutely fine because we live in a grown-up, civilized world. We're all allowed our opinions. But the conflict for me is when Martin came in, he was talking about bringing some, kind of a professionalism into the club, which to some extent's been done. I'm not disputing that kind of off the field with the academy structure. But for me, it was in the local press. I'm just trying to find the quote now is that we want to move away from volunteers. But recently in your programme, Paul, and I'll quote this, this is it. People don't complain and expect someone else to support the club financially or with football knowledge if you don't do just a little bit more to help yourself and your club. It's supporters who create change, who build success, and who set the tone for the club. So there's conflict there because one, you're asking for volunteers. On the other side, we're talking about being professionalism to an extent. Obviously, not everything can be done on that side. So there's a bit of a conflict there. And for me, having previously been a volunteer, the club needs to do a lot more to engage with a potential group of band of people who have a certain expertise and, a subject matter expert in certain things. I can't recall. Paul, can I just finish? And then what I'm saying is what people haven't been engaged to come to the club. I've said this for years and years and years where we're talking about having listening sessions, getting the people on board. This is where the club are going. We want you to be involved. This is what you want to do. I've not seen that. So when we're asking one for volunteers, before that, we're asking for a bit of professionalism, but we're not doing anything to engage your people because they're already turning off with it. how do you expect people to come and volunteer for something when they're not being invited to speak with the board, to be present, to have those listening sessions, to understand the proper strategic value and the direction of a club? That's where I'm really conflicted at the moment, because some of the people just don't know what their expertise are to help the club out.
You've got me on the show. You've had Martin on the show. We had a Zoom call with Martin and Gareth not that long ago. There are presentations there. If you want to sit in on a presentation that Tom does to his youngsters and his parents, that's open to you to go to. I don't see it as a conflict between people. I see it as a complementary thing. We want volunteers, yes. We want professionalism, yes. I think Callum and Tom have brought that to the party, and I don't think there's any dispute about that. But that doesn't alter the fact that more volunteers could be helpful. And I'll bet you now that Martin's on the line listening to all this, and if you wanted to get him on, you could probably phone him up and get him on, and he'll give you more chapter and verse about how he sees things. So don't be afraid to do that, because I'm sure he'd be absolutely willing to come on and chat more about it.
But why are the club not holding any kind of listening sessions, any kind of things at the Horsefall? Because we talk about getting people on this podcast. Let's be honest, us guys have done this. The club haven't come forward. The club have agreed to do it, and certain individuals have agreed to do it, which we're very grateful for. But this has been driven by us as the West Yorkshire Football Show. This hasn't come from the club. The club need to be proactive. The club need to present something to people to help volunteer, because they don't know what they're volunteering for. And the board, the people who work at the club, may not know what people's expertise are. I know for one instance, one guy works as a salesperson. He could help on a commercial, but he's not being approached to help that side of stuff out, and he's been going for years. There's that kind of aspect in it where people need to feel loved, appreciated, because at the moment things are not going right. Results don't help, like you've absolutely said right. But you can get quick wins, and you can have a little bit of grace with people if we engage with the supporter base a lot more. And I think that's where at the moment, and I'll be honest, Paul, your comments in a recent programme, there seems to be a big divide at the moment between the club and the supporters. And that's not cool, especially at this moment in time when we're on the pitch, we're declining, and people are voting their feet. I think there could be a lot more done. I've suggested other stuff in the past, the support liaison office between the powers that be and the supporters to get involved. But yet again, there's no noise. The silence is deafening. People want the club to succeed. We all want the club to succeed, but it's got to be two ways. It absolutely has got to be two ways. And the club have got to sometimes reach a hand out, invite people in, speak to them just internally. It doesn't need to be on a public forum like this, but they need to appreciate what fans can do and help out if they're given opportunity and the tools to do that.
But the key people at the club who are paid are Mark, Danny, Luca, Callum, Tom. Those are the people on the ground, literally on the ground. Those are the people who are permanently available to all supporters on a match-by-match basis. Those are the people who know where the club is going and what direction the club is going in. Mark and Danny are fully aware of the direction for the first team. Tom can tell you all about you. You've got the people at the ground who know everything that's going on. You've got Callum, Neil, Ben, who know what goes on behind the scenes commercially. Talk to them. They're the people to talk to.
But listen, Paul, this is exactly the issue. This is exactly what I'm trying to say. It's all right putting the olive branch out and saying, come and speak to us. People are doing. We're doing a match there. I'm talking about a professional setup, an organised, strategic way of listening to fans, getting people in during the week, floating voters from around Bradford, get them involved. It's all right we'll go and speak to them, but the club at this moment in time, this podcast at the moment is having you in crisis, whether people agree with it or not. People need to be invited. We need to have certain days to put on at the club or a Zoom call or whatever with a number of sessions on for people to feel this is what we're offering as Bradford Park Avenue. Would you volunteer in this? What are your expertise? Can you do sales? Can you do media? Can you do finance? Are you a cook? Have you worked in hospitality? The club needs to be proactive in doing that, because at the moment the fans are struggling to even go to a game. So they're not going to come and talk at the moment. They need to feel loved. They need an arm around them to invite these people in and get that help that the club desperately needs.
I'm just going to jump in for a second and bring in a comment from Ryan Burston, who is obviously a long-time Avenue fan. He says that I think the point is that the fans don't know it's them that need to talk to the fans. The fans don't know that they can come and talk to those at the club, when actually it should be the club going out and saying, you can come and talk to us.
Well, they can.
So do it. So let's do it then. Let's do it. People can do, but the club needs to go out and go to people. We are holding this certain session at a certain time at the Horsefall, and we're going to do it on Zoom. You said there's enough paid people there. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Last time we did it on Zoom, we had half a dozen fans on, half a dozen supporters, and one question from Pete.
No. Paul, you're missing my point. You're missing my point. This isn't a forum. I'm not talking about a fans forum. I'm talking about a club-led strategic overview and a volunteering participation program where people can say, I'm an expertise in this. I can offer my help in this. The club, we need help in this area. Can you help us? This isn't about an open forum and thinking and hoping people are going to ask different questions about first team to chips and gravy to what the pre-season looks like. This is a specific niche program that people need to feel involved in, because it's okay you're putting notes down in a program, which is grateful to that extent. It's only reaching a certain aspect because we're living in the digital world, and unfortunately they've stopped being shared digitally, which I think needs to happen again. But I'm talking about a specific initiative where the club need to be proactive and understand what people can do to offer their support, and it's not happening.
Well, I'll make sure I ask Callum and Tom to find some time to do that and see if that helps. And if Mark and Danny have got the time, as well as the time that they already give to fans after matches, I'll ask them as well. But it'll depend on availability, and it is a small number of people, but they are always willing to help out because they spend all their time helping the club. I'll ask them if they want to do that and if they can organise that and see where we go. There's no reason doing that. There's no hidden secrets other than the confidential stuff that you need to keep confidential. Like player wages or things like that.
And people are not expecting that stuff to be shared, Paul. People are not expecting sensitive and, we've all got rules and regs to follow. That's completely fine. At the moment, supporters at the moment feel completely disillusioned with the way things are at the moment, whether that's from the managers to the playing style to how the club is in the direction it's going. And like I say, this isn't talking about a fans forum, because for me, fans forum had very little. They really do. We've seen over the years, you've quoted that example. It would have been a waste of time. I were there, it would have waste of time. But it's got to be, the club has got to set out its strategic overview, like I said earlier, and actually, if I want people to join the club and volunteer, what can they get involved in? What does that look like? What does the time spent mean? What benefits you get for doing that? What role do you play in potentially the part in this long-term vision of what Avenue should be? Because at the moment, there's no hope and ambition for a lot of people. They're really struggling to see that.
Well, there's a two-way path. You set the agenda, we'll organise a meeting. Because we want to know what you want to know. Because the strategy of the club is fairly clear. We've decided that juniors, academies and a pathway to the first team is the best way forward. And we're utterly reliant on Gareth putting his hand in his pocket on a regular basis. If there's anything that crops up, like, for example, improving the floodlights, £60,000, £70,000, he's the only person who's doing that. So as long as you understand where the money comes from and that the business model for football clubs has got to be long-term, because there's no easy short-term solution, then fine, set the agenda that you want. Make sure you've talked to people and get the questions that you want answered. And I'm sure we can organise a meeting to see how many people want to come, listen and talk. And we'll see. I'll try my best to get Callum and Tom, possibly Mark and Danny, to come along and listen to what's being said. There's no resistance to that.
No, I agree. Leadership as well from yourselves and Mr. Sutcliffe and the other guys to potentially be there, because ultimately people at the club want to hear from the leadership team at the top. If that's where the strategic vision is coming from, they need to understand that they're being heard to and listened to as well from people at the top of the game. So I'm happy to call that. I will be in touch.
Here to try and explain things to you as well. So there's no reason.
I think we've got more questions, guys, haven't we? I think.
No resistance from me, and I will do my best to travel up from Suffolk and make sure I'm there for whenever that meeting is.
Cool. Thank you.
Just something that's just come to light kind of earlier this evening. I'm just going to get something shared on screen here. I don't know if how aware of this you are, Paul, but it was something that a couple of fans wanted us to kind of ask you about. It's the 3G pitch register, Horsfall Stadium, Bradford Park Avenue, and the status is expired, and it expired 31st of May, and the site is no longer approved and cannot be used for FA-affiliated football. And I think there was a few fans just trying to figure out what the consequences of this were and what was happening. Is this something kind of that you're aware of, or what? Do we have an explanation for this? Oh, I think we've just lost Paul there.
It's like an EastEnders moment, isn't it?
yeah, we need the music, don't we? Hello. Oh, hi. Can you hear us, Paul? Hi, Paul. Can you hear us? No. Well, we'll see. Hopefully, we can get that mystery solved there as well. But yeah, again, thank you so much for your comments here. Backing up what you said there, Lewis Thomas, I'm more than happy to attend any meeting and share anything academy related. So yeah, there seems to be a lot of appetite for that.
I'm back. I've got an answer to your question. The new certificate is in place, and it drops out next July. So it's renewed on a regular basis, and wherever that information has come from, it's not up to date. We have a valid certificate, and it's valid through to next July.
Fantastic, lovely. Well, thanks for clearing that up. Just in kind of the bigger picture, then going forward, is there any kind of talks of investment, or how much appetite is there to try and bring outside investment into the club, or potentially even takeovers, that kind of thing?
Oh, that's a very good question, because yes, there is an appetite for investment. I mean, part of the reason for getting Jerry Sutcliffe on board is because he's local. He's ex-Minister of Sport. He's got lots of good contacts within sport, and so do Mark, and Danny. What we're looking for is somebody who has an understanding of professional football, has money to invest, and can see the viability of the business model that we're trying to build. Now, get all those things in line, and then that probably eliminates quite a few people, because you've got to be able to see that there's a future pathway. You've got to have some understanding of the pathway we're trying to build from juniors up to first team. You've got to be probably a good football fan. You've got to be able to work with the people we've already got. And you've got to have some money, because the money is the key. We are looking. We are talking to people. We've had one or two contacts. And that's through contacts that we're likely to make that move. But yes, we're very keen to attract more investment, and as long as it comes in the right way with the right people. You've got to be very careful these days, as you'll know by watching the Scunthorpes and the other teams around that are struggling. You've got to be careful about how you treat your owner as well. If you look at the way Kettering have gone and the way Accrington Stanley are going, if you give the owner enough grief, they'll pull their money out. Sheffield Wednesday were very close, but apparently got money sorted out today, I think. But owners can get sensitive too. They can have issues too. And if you keep slagging off someone who's throwing money at the club, it isn't going to help. Kettering have found that out. So you've got to be very careful about how you deal with the potential for investment. People have got to see that there's a good future there, a good business model, and a really good reason to invest. We've got to create that atmosphere. We've got to find those people. But we are definitely looking, and it's not that we haven't found anybody. We've found a little bit of interest. We have yet to find someone who ticks all those boxes.
For me, before we obviously wrap up, I think the key question for me is, what does a short-term future of Bradford Park Avenue look like on and off the pitch? And when we're talking long-term and making, time and it'll come and it'll happen, what are we talking that looks like time frame? Because as you probably appreciate, and this is why we're having this debate tonight, is there's a lot of disillusionment, a lot of frustration, hardcore supporters not turning up. What's the message at the moment from the club to, one, get people coming back and on the side, and what does long-term time frame look like?
Short term, it's having confidence in Mark and Danny to select the right squad and to have the money to do that. I'm very confident in their skills and abilities. I think that's where most of the positives will come, because when the results start coming, people will start feeling more confident about coming back. So that's the short term. Medium and long term is the investment through the academy and in seeking outside investment and persuading investors that there's a business model worth investing in. And then if we ally that to a meeting with fans who feel that they've got things they want to say to the very few employees we've got, and to try and understand what people are trying to do, to learn more about what people are trying to do, that's another key factor, but that's short term. Very confident that we can do that, very happy to try and set that up. And for example, giving answers like that one about the pitch. If there are any questions like that, we can sort them out. We've got the knowledge and information. Keep watching the website and keep talking to us, Lewis, because we'll set this meeting up and we'll give you every opportunity to come and listen and learn.
No, and that's kind of, I think, what some fans want to hear. I think sometimes, as we all know, words can go too far when there's actions as well, don't sometimes speak by the words. I think, like I say, at the moment, I think there's just a lot of unsettlement. I think we all know that, and I'm happy to kind of work and help with you guys and try and get people's thoughts, ideas, how we can help volunteer for a club. Listen, I don't volunteer anymore, but we all love the club and we want it to succeed. So if we can help somewhere, that's absolutely fine. I think we just need to be really sensitive to the fact that we've been declining on the pitch for a long time, and that's been unacceptable, I think, for a lot of fans' perspectives. And if we're not careful, you talk about the generation loss. We're already losing fans who are here and now, and I think that's the real concern for people. That the club that, I'll be honest, the club I fell in love with isn't the same club as what it was. Things change. It's cyclical. It's football. It's a funny old game, and we know it can be absolutely brutal. We all have our opinions, rightly or wrongly, but it's public facing, isn't it? It's football, so people have got to take some of the criticism constructive. Don't get me wrong, some of it can be too far. I understand that, but also I think sometimes there's a responsibility when you take on these kind of roles, and supporters and a massive part. I know what you're saying, but we can't compare ourselves to like Man United, Darlington. We are nowhere near. We're absolutely nowhere near. We're a very small fish in a massive pond. And at the end of the day, there's not a lot of people, but they're making a lot of noise. And I've given grace over a long time, and I think sometimes stuff needs to be called out as honest as it can do. And I'm here to kind of probably challenge a bit of the status quo a little bit, because we've had 5 years of failure on the pitch, which hasn't been good enough, and unfortunately that somehow needs to change. And like you said, results when they go in make things better, but at the moment it only masks over the issues that we've had over the past 5-6 years, which is now coming to light a bit. So hopefully we see some short-term improvement. We all want that. The money from George should absolutely go in the first team, because that's where it was initially. That's where it needs to go to. And and the quicker we get stuff sorted on the field and off the field, the better, because we need people to come and support us.
Yeah, agree.
Just a final comment, a question that's come up a couple of times through the course of the evening. I just wanted to get this out there, Paul. GC, where has the boost the budget money been spent?
Every time.
Hopefully, you heard the question. That might be the final straw. That was the final.
It's not on Paul's connection, is it? For sure, crikey.
What was the question?
Yeah, sorry. The question, it was GC wanted to know, where has the boost the budget money been spent?
Well, it goes into the first team budget, and it's part of what Mark, Danny and Martin will spend on players. It doesn't go anywhere else. It goes straight into the first team budget, just as all of George's money has done. And any other transfers, if we get lucky enough. I mean, we've got Liam Hall at Wrexham. I think that's a bit of a long burn, but the same goes with that deal. There's knock-on benefits in due course. But all that is dedicated, and Gareth is very insistent on this, is that anything we get in for players goes to the first team budget. And that goes for what the development fund do as well. When they want to invest in our players, that's where it goes.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Well, Paul, really appreciate you coming on the show this evening. You've given it quite a large chunk of your evening to do this. We really appreciate it. It's absolutely flown by us that hour. But we look forward to speaking to you again in the future, mate.
Yeah, I'm very happy to come on again. And I look forward to seeing Lewis either on Saturday at Bradford or whenever that meeting is that we can set up.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Paul.
There we go. That was Paul Armitage, Bradford Park Avenue director, spending some time with us. Lewis, just before we log off, final thoughts then. Do you feel that you've got to the bottom of some of your answers, or do you feel it's still kind of everything's a bit up in the air and we just need to see some progress now?
Like I mentioned earlier, actions speak louder than words, don't they? We've seen over the past 5 years, we haven't, we've gone backwards, unfortunately. Like I've mentioned right top of the show, you're a football fan, you go at 3 o'clock hoping your team to win. And, this sounds, absolute sky in the sky stuff, but, the ultimate ambition is for Avenue to win the Champions League and be winning the Premier League. Why is that? We're never going to do it. We're never going to do it in a moment, but you go on a Saturday for your team to win a game. And because of that, the games that you win, take you up divisions and fight with Pyramid. That we know, we're all sensible enough to know that's not going to happen, but that is the absolute vision. The club needs to, at times, I think, prioritise the first team a lot more, because that is your bread and butter of a football club. I appreciate there's other stuff going around. The football club, it isn't just a men's first team. But at the end of the day, that is the majority of what people come for. Do I feel encouraged? We'll see. I think Paul was fairly honest to his credit, and I've said this even to Martin as well. Whether we like the opinions or not, and whether we like what we hear, to be fair, they're fair and honest. I would like to see the club be a bit more proactive. We shouldn't be having to pose those questions about the pitch scenario and find that out for this to be, announced on here. That should be.
Sorry,
You're not far, Ryan. You're not far, Ryan. To be fair, you're right. It would be a start. You're not wrong, mate. You're not wrong. But I think there needs to be a bit of proactivity. We can't just react to stuff. The club needs to be on the front foot for me a lot more. And yes, it does take numbers. But at the moment, the club does have paid staff, and ultimately, there's some stuff that you need to kind of get out there before stuff gets leaked. We've talked about the thing with West Bowling. That's been bubbling over the past week, but we've not heard anything. And unfortunately, we live in a world where rumours, whether they're right or wrong, events or what, again, right or wrong, stuff's going to come out very quickly, and the club needs to be on this more than ever because of the scenario that we're in. We're not in a good place. We're not flying high in the Conference North anymore and dreaming of getting in the Football League. One thing, I wrote this down earlier, and Gareth said this right at the beginning when he joined the club. We're in it together. We're here to win. At the moment, it doesn't feel like that. And that needs to change quickly, because at the moment, there is a division, I think, at the moment, between the club and some supporters and the first team. And even though nothing's perfect, you're not going to get, you know, an ideal scenario where everybody's happy together. But the club need to do a lot of things very quickly to get some quick wins under the belt to get people back on the side. And football results do help. But in some respects, I think it's gone a little bit further than just that at the moment. You know, there's people's emotions and feeling a little bit out of place at the club they love. And that needs to change very quickly because people are voting with their feet.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed. I want to thank everyone who's watched this evening. If you're watching again on the replay, then please get your comments in as well. We're fascinated to see what you've made of Paul Armitage's comments this evening. So I really appreciate you tuning in, all your questions. And if you can pop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well, because we make sure we always keep up to our non-league content as well. I've been Stephen Brown. With me has been Chris Bell. Chris, thank you, mate.
No worries, so mate. Thank you.
And Lewis, pleasure as always. Thank you too.
No worries, chaps. Have a good one.
And we'll be back again soon. Thank you.